Indoor cycling, Zwift, racing, parenting. We cover those and all of our hopes and dreams in between. Welcome to the Talk Dirty to Me podcast, an entertaining look into the lives of everyday people trying to achieve virtual cycling glory from our basements and garages from around the world. This podcast is rooted in Zwift and has evolved into found friendships, fitness, health, and a little sprinkle of humor. This may be one of the only podcasts where a little heavy breathing shouldn't scare you away, because we're riding our bikes while we're recording it.
Hello, everybody. We're back. Another week has gone by. I know it seems like it's drug on, but it has for me. Sully's back this week. We're also greeted by our friend from across the pond. Let me say this: you have the prestige of being the first English gentleman on the podcast. So, congratulations, everybody. Neil Greenwood.
That's dangerous, is that?
Welcome, Neil.
Hello. Well, that bodes well. It started to freeze as you started talking. But yeah, calling me an English gentleman is a strange,
Is it a stretch?
dangerous title. Yes, slightly. I mean, who else is there that could fit in it? Like Neil Tucker? I'm not convinced that fits him either. So,
But see, the other English Neil, has not been on the podcast, so yet. And you, just for your own benefit, you may notice that it freezes a little bit, but it'll keep going. So don't pay too much attention.
okay.
You just keep talking, buddy. We'll keep listening.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's I'll get this in quickly. Wind Keith Miller up early. It's an honour to be here, and that's honour spelt with a U. So just so we're clear going forward.
Are you going to spell everything out for us?
No,
Oh, you should.
you might need a decoder ring when I start talking about ZRL rather than your ZRL if we get to that. But no.
We're used to it from the Canadians too. They say Z.
There we go then.
Anyway, great. So, Neil, it's going to be hard for me to not call you Woody, but I'm going to do my best.
Well, I had the when it says put your name in for the I put Neil Greenwood in, and I thought and then about 20 seconds after I put it in, I'm like, that's not my cycling name.
Right.
It's like that bit. And now need to apologise to Steve. We're going to start talking about Marvel films far too early. But when
It's all Marvel all the time.
Yeah, when Spider-Man and Doctor Strange are talking and they introduce us, we're using our made-up names, are we? Right, yeah, that's me, that's Woody.
I'm Spider-Man. I'm Doctor Strange. Yeah. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, Neil. Where are you from? Where you grew up? What you do? That sort of
Right,
stuff.
yeah. You said you were going to ask hard-hitting questions. I didn't know we were going to start with that straight away, but yeah. Neil, I live in West Yorkshire, England, with my soulmate Chrissy and her son, my stepson Callum. I'm about 15 kilometres from the start of the Yorkshire circuit in Zwift, so which makes it even more embarrassing that I've only ridden it once in real life. I'm going to be 40 this year, which is a minor miracle all in itself.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm not sure it feels like something to be well,
it will once you get
physically,
there.
I'm not sure it's something. Yeah. And I work for the NHS. I'm called an operating department practitioner, and if you've never heard of it, that's fine, because most people in this country have never heard of it. It's basically work alongside a doctor, either a surgeon and scrub up at the table, or an anaesthetist and assist with pain relief. And that puts me on the maternity department at hospital and basically assist with epidural and pain relief support for pregnant women, or maintain the theatre environment. So if they need to come for an operation for their benefit or the baby's benefit, then we're ready to go.
Now, for our American listeners, NHS is National Health Service. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
And
Basically, on.
And from what I'm hearing you describe, to me, in the U.S. sounds a lot like a PA or a physician's assistant.
Yeah, I mean, because you have our anaesthetist is your anesthesiologist, isn't
Yeah, and
it?
we have a
And
separate
they,
path for anesthesia. It's called CRNA, or certified nurse anesthetist.
and there's loads of like basically couples that are doctors. One's an anaesthetist, one's not, and they reckon that our job's akin to just standing there with a sponge to mop the brow of the anaesthetist as they do all the work. And you're like, yeah, that's basically what we do.
You pad the ego.
Yeah, or save them from themselves, basically.
Right.
Like because we can't administer medication, we can't actually. We're not a medical professional, as it were, but we've seen enough to go. It's like if your ODP asks you, "Do you really want to do that, or are you really happy with that set of observations?" Then there's kind of an indication that you might want to do something about it.
I've heard that once or twice. Now, Neil is also very into pro cycling and has a blog about it. Which,
Yeah.
tell us about the blog.
So, writing, it kind of started. I've been writing for when somebody brought up like talk about how you got into writing. I was like, can't remember a time in my life when I wasn't writing, and it seems to be the blog seems to be the kind of natural progression of that. But it used to be fiction, and it used to be kind of an escape from real life. And there's more now with the blog. It's a focus on like the structure. Like, I mean, I don't fit to the structure. I don't get all the articles out when they're supposed to be out for the races that's supposed to cover. But it's like, yeah, that race happens then, so the preview needs to be then, and kind of builds a platform to keep me focused. And I just love writing about. Well, one, I love writing, and two, I love pro cycling. So it kind of works well for them to mesh together. But yeah, it's basically there's some stuff about me, about my rides and my weekly. There's some stuff about computer games that I play because I used to write a lot of fan fiction for various games that I played, and I kind of missed that, even though the blog takes up a lot of the writing time. And then kind of the key focus is the pro cycling, kind of just write about what is going on and give I'd say translation, but my perspective on the races. And because I came to pro cycling before I came to, well, I'll say it's definitely Zwift, but I was cycling on and off outside, but I definitely increased it the more I got into pro cycling. And it kind of amazed me, like because the pro cycling channel came out of us basically cluttering up the general chat with too much talk about the Tour de France. And it amazed me that there were people so passionate and so into riding inside that knew not very much about pro cycling. And I'm like, it's been around forever. It was just a case of, and it just opened up the fact that there are different journeys to get to the same place. Like,
I know my favorite parts of reading your blog are usually your recaps of your own races, because it gives us like perspective into what you're thinking. And I think, at least from my own reading it, like you're very willing to be like vulnerable in your writing, and that to me is like amazing, because everybody can say like, yeah, I failed here, or I didn't do what I wanted to do here, but you keep doing it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was your goals episode, wasn't it? That I think you talked about the positive power of failure. That failure is not the end.
Yeah, it's a lesson
if you don't want it to be the end. Yeah, and it definitely took me a large portion of my life to learn that lesson. For me, I mean, an adage I stuck to, like, success is fleeting, failure is permanent. Kind of that I couldn't get past my not necessarily on the bike, but failures and shortcomings earlier in life, and being able to. I think that why pro cycling and me cycling in general has stuck with me and become a passion is because it's all about suffering and overcoming suffering and being willing to fail and go again.
Absolutely.
And from a professional point of view, I don't think it's unique. I don't think there's a sport like it.
Nope.
It's a team. I suppose it's a team sport, but most of the major prizes are for individuals. And even though, I say, you're wrapped up within a team, if you don't have it on any given day, you're only ever racing against yourself.
Yeah. And I think, as far as like the Zwift aspect of it, if you don't perform well enough in your own mind on a race, there's a race an hour later or the next day or, whenever you want to do it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely improved. It's been both eat dirt. I mean, I never expected to be here talking about myself. I mean, I've talked about myself in like therapy groups and things before, but not knowing that it was being recorded and to be watched by a group of my peers.
By dozens of people.
And well, I know my stepson says he's going to watch it.
So you're going to call me a hipster
that's at least
again?
one view I'm going to get. Yeah, potentially.
Callum is his name?
Callum's his name.
I'm watching you, buddy. All right.
Yeah. I mean, when we had that Keith Miller, be mean to Keith, and I tried to record the dog and the dog wasn't playing. So I then went to Callum. I said, say something mean about Keith. And his first facial response was, what on earth are you doing to me now? And then and then I said it again, say something mean about Keith. And he just performed. He just said, Keith, you're inadequate. And I'm like, that's perfect.
There's nothing more painful than being heard that you are inadequate in a British accent, to me.
Exactly. That's it.
That's the stinger right there.
But yeah, seriously, I've never known, as much as cycling and pro cycling is a unique sport, I think, let's get a man now, I can have the talk. Oh, there we go. Eat Dirt is a unique and special place. Just there's the banter and ribbing that tortured me through secondary school, but you just somehow just know it comes from a place of love and that people are there to support you more than anything else. And it just, if you're not okay one day, people are going to support you, not just on the bike but off the bike. And yeah, I wouldn't be the person I am today or where I am today without it.
We're happy you're here.
Yeah.
Even if it feels weird.
How did you come to be a part of Eat Dirt? How did you find Eat Dirt?
I always say you're happy that as we said earlier before we started recording, my taint's not happy that I'm here. But yes, generally. I was looking around because I was cycling outside. And I was fed up of paying for a gym membership in the winter to then ride my bike in the summer. And I'm like, if I got a trainer, because I'd heard of Zwift for ages, I thought if I get a trainer and kind of rationally it out to myself that if I use the trainer for X number of years, then I'm basically paying this gym membership. And before that, I was playing a lot of, again, hiding away from reality, playing online computer games. And I knew that, well, if I'm going to ride inside, I want to find a team. I want to find a group. So I had a look around, and there was a Zwift Insider article about teamwork in Zwift races, and Dirt and Eat Dirt in general was highlighted for the way that they raced. And I'm like, well, again, drawing comparisons to pro racing, it's like riding as a team rather than just riding as a bunch of it, and working as a team rather than riding as a bunch of individuals. Yeah, sounds perfect to me. Looked up the acronym. I'm like, crap, I'm not a dad. Oh, hang on a minute. I've got a stepson. I'm a stepdad. Right, let's send an email. So I sent I got in touch with Sterney, and Sterney hooked me up with Sully. And I think 2 days after that, I was doing a team time trial, and I was like, this might not have been what I signed up for, but it just reinforced the experience because I was shocking in that. I think I've told the story on the blog and on Discord that I lasted 5 minutes in the baseline of that first team time trial, and I thought, that's it, you've blown your chance. Coming from, say, online computer games where if you're not good enough, they'll find somebody else. And again, that just inclusive nature of, I think specifically, Mike McCandless messaged me on Discord after and said, we've all been there. It's a process. Just keep going. Yep. And one day you'll be the person saying to somebody else that's had a bad day, just keep turning it around.
It's a good word.
And I will admit, I hid away from team time trials for a good 4 or 5 months before I had the mental fortitude to put myself forward for it again. But I hung around the server and I still have good days, still have bad days. There are days where I read the conversations and no, I don't have the capacity to get involved in those conversations or don't want to. On other days, I'm speaking far too much.
I think those conversations that you're alluding to tend to stay in a couple different channels now, so they're not as permeated throughout the server, if you will.
Yeah, everything eventually finds its place. Right. Kind of settles where it needs to be.
Sully may razz me for making channels. If my only contribution was making the Miller channel, just more of like a trap, like the Ghostbusters trap that they throw out there and all the things get sucked in. That's what that is to me.
Was that a double ploy plan with the turning the general chat into slow mode so that he can't speak as fast as he wants?
That one was all Sully, which he can't hear us right now. He'll never know because he won't watch us either. Oh, okay, he's back.
Oh, he's back, right. That's it. Say nice things about him.
It was Michael.
Always Michael. It's always a Michael.
Well, that's it. In that, I remember they're on the blog, first season in ZRL. Me and Dodd rode together. I don't know whether we were
toward the end of it.
All the time. Yeah, and I think I gave you one of your most traumatic experiences on the bike when my chain dropped on, was it 23rd Street, and my headset was on the floor next to it. And
I vaguely remember you and I were, I don't know if we were trying to catch or if we were in the group, and then you just disappeared. I was like, where's Neil? And then all I hear is like a bunch of clanging around and a few choice words.
Yep.
But yeah.
And then I also, from the same season, I take credit for this whole thing for the Eat Dirt podcast, because I think.
Did you not read the liner notes?
My nickname
gave you credit. Isn't that on the English version?
I've not.
I'll have to look into that.
I don't think so. No. You need to put translation subtitles in. But yeah, because the first time we rode together, I didn't even know your first name. You were on my call sheet for the time trial. You were just.
Well, I probably didn't have a microphone either, right? I was typing.
Well, that was it, because your nickname became Mike without a mic.
It's true. It is true.
And then I think I obviously touched a nerve with that nickname, because here we are with the biggest, most professional microphone you could get your hands on. And,
I'm compensating
for those days when he had no mic.
Yeah.
We had no mic.
Yeah, that's
Keith
it.
Miller's gonna have a field day with that one, by the way. Me saying I'm compensating.
Yeah.
You're welcome,
not just that, but the way you're tenderly caressing your cold hard steel.
She's pretty. So, do you have when it comes to pro cycling, because as I just said, I don't watch it. I respect it for what it is. I think they're tremendous athletes. Do you have a team that you like? It's like your team?
I would say that the Impact Team Sky had on like bringing pro cycling and cycling in general to the UK when they were a dominant. I always have and they were kind of the first successful British team. So, and in that regard, Ineos, I'd say but again, one of the beautiful things about cycling is that because the races are so different, so you've got Grand Tours, you've got week that last for 3 weeks, you've got stage races that last anywhere between, like the Basque Country is 6 days today, Paris-Nice is this week rather, Paris-Nice is 8 days, and then you have one-off events like the Spring Classics that we're going through at the minute, and different teams and different riders are good and come to the fore in different events. So as much as, I probably want Ineos to do well in any Grand Tour, the way that Quick-Step go in Spring Classics, and now that Peter Sagan, who's one of my favourite riders of all time, is at Total Energy, you just kind of pay attention to different teams on different days and different riders.
So Sagan is your guy?
Yeah, just that anybody that kind of breaks because he competes and he wins. Well, I think he's got 7 green jersey competitions, which is the de facto points and sprinter competition in the Tour de France. So, but he's not a Mark Cavendish, he's not a Sam Bennett, he's not an archetype sprinter, and he's never had a team built around him to help him. He's always had to kind of find his wheel, pick a wheel at least in his heyday. His last couple of years at Bora, he did put the team to work for him, kind of thing. But it was kind of even more impressive that he was as successful as he was.
So he's your classic underdog, is what you're saying, huh?
No, because I wouldn't say he's immensely talented. To the point where, I'd say a Wout van Aert now, that if he's in a group at the sharp end of the race, everybody's looking at him and saying he's the guy to watch, he's the guy that can win. So we're going to make him do all the work. We're not going to pull for him. We're not going to just let him sit in and not do anything. And he'd win regardless.
So
he'd have.
So Neil, what might help Dodd or help some people that maybe aren't familiar, in cycling, there tends to be different categories of racers, sprinters, climbers. Could you explain some of the categories?
Yeah. So you've got an archetype sprinter like Cavendish or Mark Cavendish, Sam Bennett. Basically, they sit in the wheels the entire race and come to, and on a one-day race or a sprinter stage, their team deposits them near the finish.
So their team protects them for the whole race.
Yep. Or for the whole tour, if it's a Grand Tour. If they're basically that on a mountain stage where they have to get in before, because there's a time limit that you have to finish the stage on to be able to ride the next day.
So they sit in the draft where they don't have to do as much work.
Yes. And then they put out immense watts in the last 500, 400 metres of the stage to power to compete between themselves. So their team deposits them within a set distance of the line and they smash it from there. Obviously, a climber, the complete opposite. Not the complete opposite. They'll sit in the wheels on the flat, but they're either deployed as a team rider to ride tempo on the front of the group and break up the group and get rid of riders that can't
when they're on
drive
big
at
hills.
that pace on big hills, or if they're a solo climber going for a KOM, either or a uphill finish, then it's basically they set a pace that they can give them the best chance to go as fast as they can uphill. Sagan kind of sits between the two.
Yeah.
he can climb really better than like Michael Matthews and Sonny Colbrelli. They won't win easily on a flat sprint because they're heavier, they don't have the sheer power.
Right.
But if you put them on a slight uphill sprint finish, then they suddenly are able to come good compared to sprinters that only can go on the flat. And that also kind of gives them the advantage that, again, in the Grand Tour, where the end result is a culmination of all 21 days of racing, Sagan used to get into breakaways to go get intermediate sprint points that other sprinters just didn't have the reach to go and get. And he kind of transformed the competition. So
what made
the green jersey was over.
Yeah.
Go on.
I was going to say, so Dodd, what made him unique was that he would be there when a lot of other sprinters were back in their gruppetto, riding Z2, hanging out with their teams. And,
Couldn't be there.
He'd be launching breakaways and, probably
and on top of that,
most famously, the World Championships here in the U.S., right?
Well, that was his first, but he won. That was his first of 3 World Championships in a row.
Yeah.
He won Richmond. He won. I can't remember, but he basically.
Do you remember how he won Richmond? Like what kind of attack it was?
Richmond was the last go up 23rd Street, and he just came out of the draft of the group he was in and went.
Yeah.
And nobody could catch him.
How about?
They were thinking, oh, this is going to go to the line, and he was like, no. So he went up 23rd.
About how far out?
Down the flat. Probably 2-3 kilometers, maybe somewhere between that. And everyone were like, well, yeah, he's putting in an attack, he's giving it a go. And again, as good as he was, the commentators were like, well, yeah, he's giving it a chance, but he's not going to win. And then nobody pulled him back to the point where he could have. He had time to sit up and celebrate coming to the line.
In a normal sprinter, they're only going 300 to 500 meters, and this guy's attacking from 3K out. So he was just kind of a unique phenomenon.
Yeah, his next 2, he was one of the few sprinters that realised there was going to be the second World Championships out in the desert in Dubai. There was a drastic change of direction, and the Belgian team knew and the British team knew that basically the crosswinds were going to tear the race to bits. And not only did Sagan, he left it too late, really. He thought, right, the group's made, the group's getting away in the crosswind, and then he just rides across on his own, goes, yeah, I'm coming with you. Oh. And then it was down between him, Cavendish, and another couple of sprinters, because there were only about 20-25 riders left because of the crosswinds. And again, he just powered to the finish.
So, Neil, if you had never followed cycling, would you pick a team to support or a rider? Like, where would you start? Because I think a lot of our people have never followed pro cycling. Or here in the U.S., like maybe they just went through the Lance Armstrong era, which has some parallels, Drew, to our Tiger Woods conversation yesterday. But, they don't know anybody in the pro peloton. They may have turned on a tour stage at some point. Where would you start? What do they need to know?
I mean, there is now a good crop of American riders coming through. So if you want to start from the national, I think of it, is it Quinn Simmons?
Yeah.
He's young and looks like he's doing some fantastic stuff. You've got
and he rides for
Joe Dombrowski. Joe Dombrowski that did ride for UAE. We were very unlucky. He rode himself into the King of the Mountains jersey, I think, on either the Giro or the Vuelta, and then the next day he got involved in a crash and ended up being concussed. But so there are plenty of American riders for you to follow, but pick a team really that if you like one-day classics, Quick Step, Lotto, Belgian teams. If you like sprinters, pick an individual rider, Cavendish, Caleb Ewan, Sam Bennett. Colbrelli, yeah. I mean, again, he's not a. I wouldn't. I mean, as
Traditional
daft as it
sprinter,
is, him and Michael Matthews, I'd say they are sprinters, but yeah, again, they're slightly closer to scan than not. Or if you like Grand Tour racing, i.e., racing that unfolds over a longer period, then you're looking at Tadej Pogacar, Primoz Roglic, any number of Ineos riders.
Movistar. Maybe a little less so this year, but Movistar is always a Grand Tour designed team anyway.
I wouldn't call it designed, but yeah, they definitely turn up to Grand Tours. When you bring three team captains to a Grand Tour and basically say whichever one of you is still standing after the end of week one, that's the guy we're going to ride for. It's not exactly but they do have as a way into pro cycling. They do have I've never watched it. They have a Netflix series.
Least expected day, I think it was called.
Now, isn't that the team that also?
If you haven't followed, would that be a good way to get involved, Drew? Like watching their Netflix or?
I said I've never watched it, I think it gives you an insight into one of the more soap opera teams on the circuit. There's always, I mean, in a Grand Tour, there's always something going on. There's always drama.
Yeah.
But
so if you're trying to
just
get maybe your significant other into pro cycling to join you, then
yes,
watching the Netflix series might be a good way.
To say, do you want
rather
to watch
than watching
Netflix
like a 6 to 8 hour road race, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Is that coming from personal experience, Sully? Is that Mrs. Sully wants to get into racing?
I have not tried.
I mean, with regards to,
I can barely get her to watch my 2-minute clips of my races.
She's a fan of the podcast. We know that.
I mean,
I don't know if she's ever listened to the podcast. I sent her one of them. I sent her the Fremont one.
You said she watches it without sound on, if I remember correctly. You said in a different episode.
So she can hear me because she's next to me, but she can't hear y'all. So.
That's right.
But yeah, I would say that with the, if you like, the individual superstars, so Wout van Aert, Van der Poel, Roglic, Pogacar, it's as popular as it's, if not more popular than it's ever been worldwide. And as much, you get considerably more YouTube content than there ever has been. So if you just like, because yeah, as Sully pointed out, sitting down for a 6-hour marathon of a single race is not something everybody can do. And then if you're going to do a Grand Tour, it's 3 to 6 hours every day for 3 weeks, and even I can't, unfortunately, dedicate that amount of time to watching cycling. So YouTube and the highlights are fantastic.
Quick Step did like a YouTube behind the scenes of the Wolf Pack, right? A couple years ago.
Yeah,
that was a great series. A lot of fun.
But yeah, you get the exciting bits of the race, and then if it piques your interest, you're like, yeah, I want to see more of this. There are subscription services out there, depending where you live. But I would recommend, if you're going to sit down and watch a race, not if you miss something in the middle that's important, it'd be in the highlights later on. But the fun bits are the beginning and more or less always the end, because there's a breakaway on pretty much on every professional race ever. And the fight to get into that breakaway can be some of the most intense racing for the majority of the stage. Because sometimes it's just riders getting in a breakaway because the sponsors tell them they have to go. You get a lot more camera time in the break.
You get talked about, right?
You get talked about, your jerseys are on TV.
Sponsorship.
And that's for some of the sponsorship. Some riders are in there in a Grand Tour for KOM points and intermediate sprint points. But like the race that's coming up in a week or so's time, Paris-Roubaix, which is pretty one special and quite unique, teams might try put riders in the breakaway to avoid all the potential. They're out of the way, they're up the road. They're not going to be involved likely in a crash, or the scrum to get onto the cobbles, and then they can be called back to help out at the sharp end of the race. And if one team sees that another team's trying to put a rider in the breakaway, and they're like, no, we don't want that to happen. We have to ride, and we have to ride now, and they have to put the power down. And it's interesting, some of the clips and some of the things you've talked about on this podcast with regards to Zwift racing. The same things happen. I mean, I saw ages ago a ZRL and race, and there's a guy in the Premier League, and he's caught by the peloton, caught by the chasing pack about 200 meters from the line. He's gone solo. And other times they talk about you, Dodd, and your pull to put Hannah in position for that climb.
That's Drew.
That's pure. Yeah, sorry, Drew,
That's
not Dodd.
him.
That's pure team racing, and it's what the professional teams do. They have specific riders in the team for specific jobs.
Yep.
And the majority of riders that shut down breakaways every day aren't superstars, aren't household names, but they do one of the most important jobs.
So if somebody wants to watch Roubaix, they want to just kind of like try out pro cycling, what do they need to know about the race?
That it is the greatest single-day sporting event in the history of the world.
It's a small lead up.
What makes it that?
Yeah. In a world where they banned the Tour of Poland downhill descent sprint finish because it was too dangerous, they've banned the Super Tuck, they've banned all sorts of things because they're too dangerous. They still let riders ride on basically dirt tracks with stones dropped in the middle of them. It's not the Tour of Flanders where cars ride on these cobbled roads every day. It's basically dirt farmland with rocks dropped in the middle of them. And the entire, if you like, stupidity of the race can be summed up with the trench of Arenberg. They had to extend it, they had to widen it to make it 3 meters wide. It basically, because it's a downhill leading off the tarmac, they're hitting it at 60 to 70 kilometers an hour straight onto cobbles. And if they come off the cobbles, they are basically in primeval forest on either side. Guy called, I'm going to ruin his last name, but John Mousseau, he had the nickname the Lion of Flanders. In 1998, he crashed on the trench and he got gangrene in his leg to the point where they thought they were going to have to amputate his leg. That was 98. In 2000, he came back and he won.
Wow.
And in 2002, he came back again and he won. And it's like... And then there's another guy that was at the front of the peloton. I can't remember what year and I can't remember his name. But he was at the front going into the trench and he crashed. And Dodd, as a medical professional, can fact check me on this, but he snapped his femur, which I think is the strongest bone in your body.
Yeah.
The femur, yeah. And yeah, he snapped it, and basically I think there's only been 1 year they've removed the trench because it was not safe, but it's there. And then there's a race in general. Yeah, that's only one of 31 sections of cobbles that the riders have to get over. And it's like a grand tour filtered down into one day that anything could happen. Another famous edition, 81, Bernardino, 5-time Tour de France champion, last Frenchman to win the Tour de France. He won in 81, but he crashed 7 times on the way to win. Wow. The last time, about 13 kilometers from the end, a stray dog ran out onto the track and knocked him off his bike. And you're like, what on earth is going on? Which again just adds to in general the beauty of cycling, that it's
unpredictability.
Yeah, there are only so many cameras, so sometimes the action gets missed. There are dogs and pedestrians and stupid
I do
people with
remember that from
cardboard
last
signs
year. Yeah,
knocking people
taking out the
over.
Peloton.
Exactly, yeah, and it's just
You got to say hello to the grandparents. That's all.
that's the one.
I
yeah.
bet Grandma was
Gotta
proud.
get on TV
Don't you
somehow.
think? Well,
What, when she got arrested? Probably.
who's to say that was her first time, Neil? Could have been second. Could have been
But
third.
this is true. Yes,
Most-
it's true.
I think I've especially recently become such a big fan of like the one day spring classics. I mean, what was it recently? Was it Milano Sanremo? Was over 200 kilometers with
It's
4 or
always
5 different
it's 200.
categorized climbs. You're talking
Yeah,
a long day in the saddle.
yeah. I mean, it's only ever. I think it's averages out to about 290 kilometers. It's the longest, basically single day race. It's longer than the World Championships, which is notoriously long. And yeah, like you said, that I wouldn't say belittle Milan San Remo, but it's basically you could tune in for the last hour and not miss anything. But yeah, you've got to think. Yeah, it's a sprint finish. But like you say, you've got to get over all that distance and all that.
Yeah, it's only a sprint finish for those who are there, right?
The
Yeah.
Peloton.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. And it's the same with Roubaix, that the first 70 odd kilometers or so, there's no cobbles. I wouldn't say it's easy, but everybody knows the race starts when you get onto that first cobble section, and you can't. Again, the adage, you can't lose the race on any one of the individual cobbled sections, but sorry, you can't win the race on any one cobble section, but you can lose it on any of them. You've got to be in the right position, miss all the stray dogs, and
Cardboard sign.
not have a mechanical. Exactly, yeah. I mean, last year, just some of the crazy stuff. I mean, it were raining. It were in October because of the changed schedule. But you've got all the talk of how treacherous these cobbles are, and there's video footage of a rider doing 40 kilometers an hour onto a fresh set of cobbles, using his own Allen key to tighten up his top tube. And you're like, I can't take my hands off the bars going downhill. I can't descend that well. And this guy's one-handed on slippy cobbles, just
doing some bike maintenance.
And then there was and then there's a guy that finished in the top 10 who had a mechanical problem, and he's braking with the cleat off his shoe because his brakes don't work. He takes his foot out of his pedal and applies it to his front tyre to slow himself down so he can turn. Because one big factor of Paris-Roubaix, because of the length of the cobbles and the narrowness of the roads, that if you get a puncture you're pretty much on your own, because your team car could be 5-10 minutes behind you and you have to take a neutral service tyre, or you have to have some enthusiastic Belgian help you take your wheel off and try and fix it at the side of the road, and you just...
But then the cobbled climbs here. I'd say, what is it? The one from the Tour of Flanders last weekend was the Copperberg. It averages 14%, but maxes out at 21 on cobbles.
21, 22.
So you're seeing these professional riders who've been doing this entire lives, almost looking like they're ready to quit, and just trudging up there at 6-7 kilometers an hour, and you're like, oh, so they do hurt.
Exactly.
But,
I mean, to look for what you want to look out for, it's like if you think if you're putting power down on the front of in any race, in any group, you're either riding to position your rider, your team leader, because there's a climb coming up or there's a set of cobbles coming up. So if your team's en masse at the front of the group, then they're up for it. They've got a plan. And then as the race kind of attritions out and there are less and less riders, usually nobody wants to be on the front of a group pulling and putting effort. But in Roubaix, there's you get to pick your own line across the cobbles. You're not getting the dust and the muck from the people in front of you. So it's just a complete different dynamic. Yeah, you're getting less draft. You're getting more draft if you sat behind, but you're also getting all the mud and the crap, and you're getting less time to get used to which angle do I want to take, which corner do I want to take.
Somebody falling in front of you and getting involved in a crash.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, the end, I wouldn't say it's anticlimactic because it's a sprint on a concrete velodrome, which is awesome in and of itself. But the last couple of sets of cobbles aren't the most challenging. So with a couple of kilometres to go, you'll see it revert back to, because I think Sonic Obrelli won last year because he basically didn't take a pull for the last 10 kilometres. He just sat on Van der Poel's wheel and said, go on, you're the favourite. Off you go.
Yeah.
And then Thomas Vermeersch riding in his first ever Paris-Roubaix, and he finished third. And you're like, well, not just that, but poor guy, you're probably going to be more of a favourite and more of a rider in years to come and never come this close.
Yep.
So Neil, who would you be watching for in a couple weeks? Like if somebody says, "Hey, I'm gonna watch. I need somebody to cheer for. Who are the favorites?"
I would say Van der Poel the form that he's in, having won on cobbles twice already, and coming second last year, has to be a favourite.
They're out, right? He had COVID.
If he comes back, which I don't think he will, but I mean, going forward, not just in this race, but in any race, the two of them in there.
That's so much fun to watch.
Because they've kind of ridden against each other their entire lives, and they almost cancel each other out. Like if they're in a group together, one of them can't attack because if they attack, they're giving the advantage to the other one because they're that on their day they're that close. And I don't really I pay attention to the cycling. I'm not bothered about the interviews and stuff after, but I think they don't really like each other. They kind of had a grudging respect for the other's talent, but they're not friends, and it's a pretty awesome, like I say, dynamic, and any race they're in is better for them both being in it.
What is it?
I'd look. I don't know what the lineup is from Ineos, but they seem to have made. I mean, they had Gianni Moscon, who was until he had a puncture in the last 30K last year. Looked good.
And is he the most hated man in cycling, or
Gianni Moscon? No, I thought I read an article that Nicky Terpstra was the most hated man in cycling because he's a Belgian rider that even the Belgians don't support.
Okay.
I think it's because he rides very. He sucks wheels basically. He takes advantage of the misfortune.
Who would ever do
that? He takes advantage of the misfortune of others. Yeah, exactly. But he's not the swashbuckling, attacking, flamboyant Belgian rider that the Belgians want to get behind and cheer. He's the pragmatic, save my energy, exploit other people's weaknesses.
He's British.
So even when he won a classic, people, thank you very much. I'll take that. I'll take my compliments where I can get them. But yeah, so whichever Ineos rider, I mean, Pidcock's the cyclocross background, can ride over uneven terrain. Alaphilippe came from cyclocross originally.
Can you tell people what cyclocross is?
In essence, no, because it's not a discipline that I'm very much road cycling, and cyclocross to me, I wouldn't say it's like anathema, but I never understand you're riding your bike, why are you going to get off the bike, push it uphill, or ride it on sand?
So it's like cyclocross with a bit of like a Spartan race in the middle, except you have your bike with you.
The gravel race meets obstacle course meets road
like
race.
A mountain bike race
meets Rocky. Rocky in the stairs.
It's kind of a hybrid between gravel, off-road, and like I say, mud and an obstacle course. It's a very unique event that I can't say I follow particularly, because you say all my cycling gets done on the bike. I don't see the attraction of, like you say, jumping off the bike and having to climb a set of stairs halfway through.
But it's been fascinating because, like you said, some of the best, road cyclists in the world are now coming out of that discipline.
Yep.
Definitely, and it's changing the whole talk of the whole professional road race scene is about them sorting out having only 18 teams for next year, and it all basically boils down to Van der Poel. He's such a huge cyclocross name originally, and he doesn't want to give that up.
And mountain biking as well, right?
But because
he does all three.
Yep. But because he's so successful on the road, whichever he rides for Alpecin Fenix, they're not a UCI team, but they're the third or fourth most successful team in the list. So they could. I don't know whether the UCI intends to force them to become a UCI team, but it's the star power and the, if you like, the riders coming out of cyclocross and other disciplines is having a huge impact on the more traditional road racing.
Well, and it's fascinating the types of riders it's producing, because, like you were saying about Sagan, not that they're similar to him, except in that they can win in a lot of different scenarios.
Yeah.
And even being bigger riders, they can win a sprint. They can climb with some people they shouldn't be able to climb with at times.
Well, the thing that's kind of, I'd say, inside riding and Zwift, and the adage that what's a what's, that I wouldn't have, until I saw him do it at Strade Bianche last year, watching Van der Poel just drop riders, made them look like children on the gravel section. And then if you'd told me you've got a rider as heavy as Matteo Van der Poel, and you've got Julian Alaphilippe, a basically consummate climber, going up the last climb towards the finish in Strade Bianche, which one of them's going to win? I wouldn't have necessarily bet my house on Alaphilippe, but Van der Poel just destroyed him.
Yep.
Just literally rode away from him like
he was standing
like
still.
He wasn't important, like he wasn't like he wasn't the current world champion.
Well, and they add a bit of flair and excitement to the race, because I guess I would say there's kind of like, I don't know, in order of where there's like things that you're supposed to do and things that you're not supposed to do, and they do the things you're not supposed to do, and then they win. It kind of just turns the sport on its head.
I mean, I think again, back to Flanders this last weekend and Van der Poel and Pogacar, that I think I put on the blog that Pogacar did everything he could to win that race. And if Van der Poel hadn't been there, he'd have won it by a country mile. But he literally could not get rid of him on that last climb. And as much as that, people might be scratching their head in that final sprint thinking, what on earth's going on? Pogacar had lost 10 or so kilometres back down the road when he'd not been able to get rid of him.
So what were the names again for Paris-Roubaix? Who would you watch? Van der Poel,
Pidcock, or whichever Ineos rider comes to the front. A whole host of Belgians. Philippe Gilbert, if he's riding. It's the kind of race where those workhorses that do all the work for riders in the rest of the races get to kind of come out. I mean, Sonny Colbrelli won it last year, so him, Michael Matthews, if he's riding, and then
any cobble specialists.
Say if you see, I mean, he's going to go because he's going to get an invite due to Total Energies, but I don't see Sagan performing. He's won it once, and I'll still be rooting for him because I've rooted for him his entire career, and just because he's at the back end of his career doesn't mean you can suddenly just shrug your shoulders and say, yeah, I don't like you anymore. But I think Roubaix, more than any race in the world, anything can happen. And just kind of look at, if you tune in and see that like halfway through or when the cobbles start and see how the groups develop, just pick somebody in that and say, that's my person. I think they're going to win. And
you're heartbroken.
To have your heart broken and and your nerves just because every cobbled set, like I don't particularly like Sully said, Gianni Moscon's not the nicest guy. He's not the most celebrated cyclist, shall we say? But when he was at the front, I wanted him to win because I think there's something about like Dodd were talking about Sagan and was he an underdog? He wasn't, but if any time there's an underdog in a race, like you've got one guy out front and a pack of 4 people are trying to chase him down, to me it doesn't matter who that one person is.
Sure.
You just want them to survive, you want them to get there, you want them to overcome. And yeah, just heartbreaking that one, he crashed. He got back up from the crash and kept going. He had a slow puncture on his back wheel. And he still had time, but I think the argument is they changed his back wheel for one with too high a pressure. And it was something as simple as that his rolling resistance wasn't what it was at the beginning of the race. And he just couldn't produce the speed and the power to
I feel like
overcome those chasing after him.
You are a wealth of information when it comes to pro cycling. And I feel like, unfortunately, our hour, because Drew has to go to work, like a normal person, I guess.
Yeah.
I definitely think we should have you back whenever there's big events and big activities. And I know you have more of your personal story to share as well. So
yeah,
we'll have to do a part 2.
I mean, a bit of a personal motivation. I thought, I'll try not to talk about Grand Tour racing too much, and then you'll have to have me back.
You can talk about whatever you want,
the
buddy.
Tour de France or the Vuelta at the end of the year.
We'll have you back.
We'll do a tour episode because we'll probably do like a no. What do we call where we pick riders? We'll do one of those again.
Oh yeah, the fantasy games.
A sweepstake.
That must be a British thing.
You mean
is that like a skirt steak? Is it meat?
Yeah.
We'll do some fantasy cycling for
you guys will have to coach. You guys can coach me on who to pick.
Yeah. You can tell everybody your secrets.
Yeah. I think that's where I won Drew over in the pro cycling channel. He's like,
I was every morning up at the lake during the tour. I'd wake up.
The infamous
lake. My saga of suffering preview.
Give us your website so people can go read the blog.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine
I'll put it in the
all
link
the way
too.
through this and I've not dropped the name of the actual blog. It's called the Saga. Yeah, it's called the Saga of Suffering, which again, I thought toying around with the name, it's ridiculously embarrassing. But like Saga, yeah, go on, then we'll go with that. But yeah, www.sagaofsuffering.co.uk.
I'll post a link in the notes.
I know it well.
Well, Neil.
But no, Drew, I was talking about. Sorry, go on. I was talking about when I picked Mark Storer or Michael Storer in my fantasy team, and your team were chasing after mine. And you thought, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. And he's like, you swine.
No. Who is this guy?
Who picks this guy? Never heard of this guy. And Neil's picked him.
And then that was it. You pulled away from the rest of the group. Just with one rider. I was like, that's insane. But he's well picked. Good research.
Well, Neil, I have to say once again, thanks for being the first British gentleman on the show, and perhaps the last. We don't know.
Steve,
I would say I hope I've set the bar unattainable by anybody else that comes after.
Steve's going to be happy.
I know,
he only got that one Marvel reference, which he'll probably turn it off, and he'll never know.
We're going to save it for the next one. In the altered words of your stepson, your bar is adequate.
That is
He's
high
gonna call
praise
me a
coming from
hipster now
Callum.
anyway.
That is high praise.
Well, till next week. We'll see you guys then.
Yep.
Everybody have a good week. See ya.
Thank you, guys.
Anytime.
Thank you for having me on.
Suck it, Miller.